Hey there, welcome to this video that'll show you how to set up a PHP development environment for the SE260 course at New England Tech. What you see here is the Canvas main page, and I want to direct your attention to the course modules section. Under course resources, in the development environment section, there's a document called PHP Development Environment for SE266. It's a PDF file. I'll show it to you here quickly. And it holds all the detailed instructions of setting up this environment. This video in essence talks you through that document. The one thing that you want to keep in mind is if you set this up at home, before doing anything else, you'll need to install the software that's listed here. Git, VirtualBox, and Vagrant all need to be installed. You should be familiar with Git at this point. VirtualBox is an Oracle tool that allows you to administer virtual machines, and Vagrant is a tool that allows you to administer those virtual machines via command line and provision these virtual machines. But we won't get into a ton of detail on Vagrant, other than I'll show you how to bring up a virtual machine and how to suspend it or how to shut it down through the command line. So make sure that software is installed if you do this at home. It will be installed in the labs, so we're not going through the steps of installing this since it's all pretty straightforward. It's all point and click. So let's get this out of the way. I will close the browser. And the first thing we do is we're going to identify a folder on the hard drive where we store all of our PHP code and where we store the virtual machine. In this case here, I will store it on my desktop. I'll simply create a new folder here, and I'll call it code. As I said, you can install it anywhere on your hard drive. Just make sure it's a hard drive. Don't try and do this stuff on a USB drive. It simply won't work. The performance is not there. You can use a portable hard drive, but don't use a USB stick. So we'll go into this folder here, and in this folder we will open up a git bash shell. I just right-clicked excuse me. I just right-clicked the folder, opened up the shell, and in there we'll issue this git clone command. And you can find that the exact same command in the document that I just pointed to about a minute ago. So I'll clone that repository. After I clone that repository, I'll do an ls, see what it created. It created the folder SE266_code. We indicate it. That's where the repository needed to go. So we'll go into that folder. And the one thing that I want to point your attention to is you want to make sure that there's a Vagrant file here. This Vagrant file has instructions on how to download the virtual machine if it hasn't been downloaded already, and how to bring the virtual machine up. One thing that you want to keep in mind that this virtual machine does not have a graphical user interface. We won't need one for this course. And the fact that it's doesn't have a user interface will allow us to bring up the machine much quicker, and it'll shut down a lot quicker, and it saves some resources on your machine as well. So we're into this directory, and the first thing we want to do is we want to issue this command here called vagrant up. The very first time you run this command, it'll download the virtual machine from a website, Homestead or something rather, and then it'll go through a bunch of steps of bringing that machine up. This is going to take probably a few minutes the first time you run this. So a few minutes later, your terminal window will look something like this. I'll scroll all the way up. This is where we issued the vagrant up command, and then Vagrant will simply show you a bunch of logging messages. All the way at the bottom, it'll simply show you the command line. I typically like doing something like this, that'll tell me the status. And I'd like to see now that the virtual machine is indeed up and running, and that means we can get started. And that's exactly what you see here. The VM is running. So again, if this is the first time you run this vagrant up command, we want to make sure that there is a folder located in this directory structure where you can put your code. And this is where the virtual machine expects your code to be. So it's in a subfolder project, and under that subfolder there's another folder, public, and that public folder will hold all of our PHP code. Right? It's important that we go to that particular folder, project, public, and I will just create a new PHP file here. I'll just do it as a text document for now. I'll create index.php, and we will edit this index.php. I'll just do it with Notepad++ for now, but you can really use any editor you want. In a later video I'll show you the editor that the IDE that I prefer to use for this class. But for this purposes here, we're just going to do some very basic PHP code. And I'll use a PHP command that will give us all sorts of information on our PHP environment. So I'll save this, and now let's open this. And let's open this the wrong way first. So I'll go to the browser, and I will simply either navigate to the file, or I can just drop it in here, right? And this just shows us plain text. This is not something we want. As you start out with your PHP projects, you might run into this issue a couple of times because you forget that you really need to run this stuff through a server. And you can see it here in your browser window. If it says file here, that means no server is used to serve up this piece of PHP code. This needs to be something like http:// and then some type of IP address or a website. So this particular environment expects the URL to look like this. And you can change this, but for the purpose of this class we're just going to use this particular IP. And I'll navigate to it, and I'll use index.php, and that'll show us, that'll run the PHP script that we created here, right? And so it shows us a bunch of information on the development environment, and this shows you now that you have successfully set up your PHP environment and that you know where to store the PHP files, and you know how to render them.